Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montevilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Baby Lock Jubilant. In this video, I'm going to show you the accessories that come with this machine. So to start with, you have this beautiful cloth cover. You can take that right off your machine. And the thing I like about this cloth cover, it's got the seams are all nice and serged and sealed. It's not going to fray. If you want to, you can put this in the wash and it's just fine. Another thing I like about this cover is once you put this on here, it's got a little hole in the top so that you can put your handle there and carry your machine around just with the cover still on. Now, I think it's important to keep your machine covered whenever you're not using your machine, because that's going to keep the dust off your machine and especially keep the dust out of your machine from getting into your machine. That helps. So, beautiful cover. You can just fold that up, put that in your closet or wherever you put that. Then you also have the manual. Now, the manual is really a nice, helpful thing. I suggest you study it. A lot of what I have to say in my videos is in the manual, but I try to give a fuller explanation. Also, we have the quick start guides. Now, there's two of them here. One is more pictures, and it's a little more detailed. The other one is full color, but it also includes words on both sides. So it's basically about the threading of your machine. I also have a video on that too. Then you have your power cord that's already plugged into the machine, and we have the foot control. Now, the foot control plugs into the side of the machine over here towards the front. You can use your machine without the foot control by just using the start-stop button. So you push it once to start its sewing, and a second time to stop it from sewing. Some of your stitches, like your buttonholes, stop automatically, so using the start-stop is a useful function in those cases. Then we have this stitch chart. Now, you also have stitches down here, but these are a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit easier to see. This fits right up here on the handle like that. So that's a nice way to look up, see what stitch you want, go right to that number, turn your jog dial, and there you go. Okay. Now, the regular zigzag foot, I'm going to turn on the machine so you can have a little light here. The regular zigzag foot is already on your machine. It's the J foot. This little knob in the back, you push that in, and that would be good for going over thick seams. So you see, like you're hemming some jeans and you've got that thick seam on the side, and it tends to get bogged down right here as it's getting up into that. So you'd stop with needle down, push that knob, lower your presser foot, and it stays level while it's going across those thick side seams. That's the purpose of that knob. Okay, then we have our zigzag foot, or the fancy stitch foot, and that's where you're doing fancy stitches like this and you are putting a lot of thread into your fabric. You want that to flow right on through. That's what that groove is in the bottom of the foot. That's the end foot. Then this one is the G foot. It's meant for sewing the edges of your fabric where you don't want the edges to curl up. There's several stitches here that are overcasting stitches. This is the foot that you'd use. By the way, when you choose a stitch, it's going to show you the foot up here that you that's suggested you use. Here's an example. Stitch number 11 suggests using the G foot. This foot is for doing blind hems. Now, this is an example of a blind hem. As you can see, you can't see the stitches at all. That's what it means, blind hem. The stitches are sewn this way, and you actually sew it like this. You have that flange right there, that guide right along that seam line there. It makes a beautiful blind hem stitch. And that would be the stitches right here, 21 and 22. Then there's your zipper foot, and I don't have it as a sample shown of how to sew a zipper. That's something you kind of, it's like a sewing technique, but your book does explain it a little bit. Just know that you can put your zipper foot on either on the left hand or the right hand side, depending on which side of the zipper you're sewing, and also if you want to sew very close to the zipper teeth, you have that option. Just make sure that you're not sewing on top of this little lump here. Now, it does have a little bit of a point to it, so it helps deflect your needle if you accidentally get your needle in the wrong place. But it's a good idea to lower your hand wheel, make sure that there's no metal-to-metal contact there. This is also a really nice foot for sewing that thin piping that you can get in packaged trims. The piping can fit right under this groove here, so it's nice to be able to sew right next to the edge of that piping. So this is a good foot for that. Then this is our buttonhole foot. Now the buttonhole foot is good for sewing buttonholes. Obviously, you've got several buttonholes that you can use, and all of these buttonholes require this foot to do that. You would put your button back here, and that's going to determine the length of your buttonhole. Now I have another video on how to use the buttonhole foot, so you can watch that. This next foot is for sewing buttons on to your fabric. Now this is the kind of button you would want to have, the kind that has holes in it, either 2 holes or 4 holes. You fit that right under there, put that under there and line up like the red marks, and you put this on your foot, on your foot holder. Then choose a zigzag, and I would go with probably 7. You'd reduce your stitch length right down there to 0, so the feed dogs are not going to be pulling it back and forth. And then you can adjust your width depending on the width of the holes of the button. Just sewing a zigzag and a locking stitch at the end, and you've got your button sewn on. Now this little extra thing here is so that when you slide that forward, it's going to give a little bit of slack in the thread. And that's really nice for buttons because you want them to sit up above the fabric a little bit, so when you button your button, the button hole can fit underneath the button. So that's a nice feature. This is a really good little thing. It holds the button nice and securely when you're sewing it on. Now this is the hole punch. So if you're making a keyhole buttonhole, you want to be able to punch that little hole at the end, or if you're making an eyelet or something. This doesn't have eyelets, but that's fine. You can do that there. If you are making eyelets, this is a great little tool. Just make sure that you've got a block of wood or something underneath this, because this is nice and sharp when you're punching holes. So this little hole here on the end of it is like the clean out. So if you're punching a lot of buttonholes or eyelets, that extra fabric is going to come up there and get this filled up. Well, it comes out there and doesn't continue filling up. That's a nice little feature. Then we have our spool caps. Now, I've got the small spool cap on this machine because I have a narrow spool. That would be for this size of spool. If you have a larger spool or medium-sized spool, you have the medium-sized spool cap. And then for your big spools, you have a big spool cap. So use the appropriate size spool cap for the spool that you're using. This is well, I kind of think of it like the net that knitters put around a ball of yarn. What it does is for springy thread that tends to want to, if you put it on there, it tends to want to kind of unspool all by itself. It's a little bit springy. Put this around the spool of thread, then put your thread on the spool pin, and that helps kind of keep things organized. The thread can still come out the end this way. This is your auxiliary spool pin. It goes right up here, and that is what you'd use if you're going to do twin needle sewing. So I'd have one spool up here, another spool here, use my twin needle, which is this right here, put that in there, and you can do beautiful effects like this, twin needle sewing. This is also good for if you have thread that doesn't tend to like to spiral off the end of the spool, but would rather just kind of reel off to the side, less kinks and stuff, then you'd want to use your upright spool pin. Okay. Then you have extra bobbins that come with your machine. If you need to get more bobbins, because you might, you've got your black, white, and gray, but say you want red, well, okay, get more bobbins, but make sure that they're the same kind, class 15 plastic bobbins. They should be plastic, not metal, because metal tends to have magnetic properties which can interfere with your stitches, and of course they need to be the same height and diameter. Then we have screwdrivers, 2 screwdrivers. Depending on what you're unscrewing here, you may want to have the short screwdriver, the longer one for maybe your needle clamp bar. Then we have our seam ripper, and the seam ripper is the sewer's friend. If you make a mistake, you can always pick it out with your seam ripper. Also, this is good for once you're done making your buttonholes, you open your buttonholes with the seam ripper. Now, I like to use the seam ripper with the cover on it because that way I've got something more to hang on to. Plus, when I set it down, it doesn't roll away. And when you're done using that, close that up. This is the brush for brushing out, cleaning out your machine, and I have another video on how to maintain your machine and get the lint out from underneath there. That's what you would use. And then this is a needle set for extra needles that, you know, for different type of sewing like knits and stuff. And your book is going to talk more about that kind of sewing. So, and there's your twin needle. Now, the twin needle, I'm going to just show you what that looks like rather than getting it out of the package. That twin needle looks basically like this. So if you use up this needle, and use up means a needle gets dull or bent or broken or whatever, and you need to get another needle, make sure you get the same size as this. In fact, if you're not sure, bring this package, because right back here on the back it tells you what size of needle. 2 means it's 2 millimeters from one needle to the other, and 11 means that the thickness of the actual each needle. That's the size. And then the type or class is right there. So the reason why I suggest getting that is because if you just get any old twin needle, it might be a wider one like this. This machine, when you push this, is calibrated for the size of needle that this says, not for a wider one. You don't want to be doing a zigzag and have it too wide, because one of those needles, or both, will hit the foot. So make sure you get the correct size of needle. And to replace needles, eventually you're going to run out of these. To replace needles, get good quality needles. I would suggest either Classe or Schmetz. Those are good quality needles. You'll have really better sewing experience if you get good quality needles and good quality thread. I'm using Mettler right here in the machine, and that's a good quality thread to use. So that's the basic accessories that come with your machine. You can also get additional accessories, and your book is going to talk about that. Look in the accessory section. There's like a side cutter and a quilting foot that has a bar at the side. It's really nice little things. But that way you can accessorize your machine to make it so the way you have envisioned, but you've still got a lot of capability here. So experiment with your machine, have good fun time sewing, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give us a thumbs up, and if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. We have lots of other videos on this machine and on other machines here on our Montevilla YouTube channel, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye.